Accessing.
When TV and radio collide.
Love it.
Wow.
This is what you get. You're listening to JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars.
Don't touch that dial!
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is hour number 3 of JJ and Alex. Jeremiah Jensen, Stevenson Sylvester in today and tomorrow for Alex Curie, who is on sabbatical. He's trying to find himself. He's trying to find, I don't know what he's trying to find, but I hope he finds it. Alex will be out for the next 3 weeks. The real reason is the real reason is paternity leave, so we wish him the best while he's out. In the meantime, me and Sly are holding it down here on JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's brought to you by G2G Bars with all natural ingredients, no preservatives, and plenty of protein. G2G Bars are perfect for anyone who needs a tasty and nutritious boost. It's never too early to talk about college football. We are constantly trying to educate ourselves with BYU in year 2 in the Big 12, Utah in year 1 of the Big 12. We're trying to get to know all their opponents, all the new rivals, everything about everybody. And we're going to continue to do that right now on The Cut.
It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is what made the cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to get to know the Arizona State Sun Devils a little bit better as they're going through spring football. Joining the show now is Chris Karpman, who is with Sun Devil Source of 24/7 Sports. Chris, thanks for joining the program.
Hey, good to be with you.
Well, let's jump into this. Let's start with spring football for the Sun Devils. Where are they at right now? Are they started or are they well through? We've got BYU's already done here. Utah's into week 3. So where's their schedule with spring football right now?
Yeah, ASU's only done one week, 3 practices of spring ball. They decided to start late. There's a few reasons. I think part of it is related to the transfer portal and trying to have a better chance to retain some of your players who are in competitions through spring ball. So there's strategy involved, but we're getting a pretty good sense already that practices are open to media. It's been very free for us to basically go and take a look and shoot video and everything. It's been great.
That's pretty refreshing to hear. That's not the case everywhere, especially not here with these established programs in Utah, and that's fine. Coaches have their prerogative. They can do whatever they want. Biggest storylines for the Sun Devils in spring football. What are those storylines?
I would say the competitive depth and size on the line of scrimmage, both sides, is a lot better than last spring. The programs they inherited, you really saw that their O-line and D-lines had been hollowed out, offensive in particular. And then they had a bunch of injuries through the season that was talked a lot about. But this year, ASU has 7 or 8 of its top 10 offensive linemen at 310-plus pounds. They're deeper. They've added 4 Division I transfers and retained a lot of their players. They have 2 guys back from injury who didn't really play almost at all, definitely not in the Pac-12 last season. And then D-line, they added 5 Division I transfers to try to help overcome the losses of Deshaun Mallory and B.J. Green. I think they're absolutely deeper, especially at tackle. And that's going to all of this is going to help them practice harder and more physically. They need to develop a lot of that toughness, both mentally and physically, that they didn't really have enough of last year.
Right. I mean, they got 23 new transfers in, and like 10 of those transfers are all interior linemen, right? You got O-line, D-line, a big mix of that. What was Kenny Dillingham's strategy coming into the offseason? How does he want to make a jump to the Big 12?
Yeah, he was pretty frustrated last year with their inability to practice the way he wanted, especially during the season. To develop players, you need to still have a day of the week or more where you're going hard, and especially with younger players that you're trying to develop. And they were so thin last year across the roster that they just couldn't practice the way that they wanted, and then not being in a bowl, obviously, you miss those opportunities. So just the overall development aspect and the training, the toughness, like Utah, BYU, I mean, like you look at those two teams and you think they are tremendously physical and tough at the line of scrimmage, and really throughout their rosters and how hard they play, the way that wide receivers block, the way that defensive backs attack, plays out onto the perimeter. That's the standard, actually, that Dillingham has said for his program, as far as like how hard that they play and the overall mentality of the program. So they're trying to foster and develop that, and they needed to get bigger and deeper at the line of scrimmage to really be able to get that going.
I really admire and respect Coach Dillingham for what he was able to accomplish in year one. We all know the dumpster fire he inherited and the problems that he had to take on, the challenges he had to take on, and I think he did it as well as anybody could. That team was competitive in a lot of games last year. They had Washington on the brink. I think everybody appreciated the fight that team showed when they had nothing to play for all season long. What's the next step, though, for Coach Dillingham into year two? Obviously, we knew they was going to be tough for him last year. How much of a step can they take in year two?
Well, I think considerably. The minimum standard has been elevated, and I'm not talking about wins and losses, but just guys last year were, they were just focused on doing everything right that were basic type things, showing up on time and getting into the weight room and having the proper nutrition and studying film on their own. And I just feel like at the outset of spring ball this year, all of that stuff is already established to be very expected, and they're elevating in terms of just all these other areas that I think are really important to being successful, just getting guys to play heavier, faster, to understand their schemes a lot more. Like their installs are going way smoother this year. They're practicing with a lot better competitive energy, and just like the conditioning of the players is better. So you put all that on the field with better play at the line of scrimmage, then really what it comes down to, because ASU has good receivers, good running backs, they have good skill in the secondary athletically. What it comes down really is the quarterback position. And that was absolutely the worst quarterback play that I've ever seen from ASU last season. And granted, they had a bunch of injuries and were on their fourth-string quarterback by the third game of the season, and then continued to have some issues. Trenton Bourguet not being healthy, Jaden Rashada only playing in 3 games. But the leading passer for ASU had 4 touchdowns passes. Like, that's unheard of in modern football. And so they added Sam Levitt from Michigan State to transfer. He was a 4-star recruit at a high school that Dillingham had recruited both at Florida and Oregon for a period of time. And they feel like he's somebody that has a good blend of size, athleticism, arm talent, also still very young. And so between him and Rashada, who is not going to be able to be a full participant in the spring because he had surgery on his thumb, they need to get an elevated level of play. And if they don't demonstrate that in the spring, you can't rule out ASU looking at maybe a senior quarterback in the spring transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, we experienced that when we played ASU this year. Scatterboo kind of had to throw a couple passes because the quarterback room at Arizona State was so thin. But you do know that, like, Bourget came in and gave a couple spells for you and made that happen. But yeah, if Sam Levitt can come in, and we've been talking about it on this program, a quarterback is essential, right? We talked about it on the NFL level, with Baker Mayfield and all these guys going to right programs and offensive coordinators, right? This is a big quarterback draft, and how important, that relationship is into the program that you're going into. Yeah, you can have a great coordinator, but all these guys need to have a guy. right? I need to have a quarterback to be able to deliver the football. As you said, you guys got talent, right? You got Elijah Badger. I seen you just signed Raleek Brown in the transfer portal. You got some young guys coming up. Who is that? Who are some of these new guys that I know there's only 3 practices in, but who are some of these new guys that a lot of people should probably take note of?
Well, they do have quite a few talented newcomers, but they also have some guys that are returning at the skill positions that maybe just were not really understood or appreciated for their capability last year when you don't have the protection to be able to set up the throw down the field. So Troy O'Meary is a receiver who a lot of people are not really familiar with him, but he's 6'4", 230, transferred from Texas. He looks great. And Jake Smith sat out last season transferring from USC. He was a former Gatorade Player of the Year as a wide receiver who went Texas, USC, ASU. So he had to sit out. Second-time transfer, that rule no longer applies. And then Jordan Tyson was recovering almost all of last season with a leg injury that he suffered in November of 2022, but he was a leading receiver as a freshman for Colorado 2 years ago. So those guys, along with Badger and Melquan Stovall, who's back, give you a really great wide receiver room. And I feel like the additions for ASU with the skill positions are for Raleek Brown, you mentioned, I mean, he's the twitchiest probably athlete they have on offense, a guy that you can throw the ball to, get it up to him on end arounds, jet sweeps, and play some two-back type structures. That's a big thing. And then defensively, Xavier Alford was a safety. He sat out last year. Also, Texas, USC, ASU couldn't play. Probably would have started over Chris Edmonds, who was a starter last year. And then they basically got several other defensive backs in the transfer portal who I think are going to compete for a starting role right away. Javon Robinson from Washington State. He was like their number 3 corner. They got Cole Martin from Oregon. He was a 4-star recruit. He's from Chandler. He's probably going to start at nickel. And then they added 2 linebackers. Cyrus Fiasu was a team MVP at San Diego State last year as a sophomore and tied for the team lead in tackles. And then Keyshawn Elliott had 110 tackles, I believe, at New Mexico State, which was a 10-win team last year. So, excluding the 9 scholarship newcomers along the defensive line and offensive lines that they got all these other guys that have a chance to start.
I want to revisit the quarterback competition real quick. Obviously, Jaden Rashada out for spring with the thumb injury, and you mentioned some of the guys in that race. How open is that competition? If Rashada's healthy, is he the guy in the fall, or is this a really wide open competition?
I think it's definitely open. Bourget is the least likely of the 3 to be the starter. I think just based upon it's already seen that he has a high floor but a very low ceiling as a quarterback. And the reality is ASU needs to be able to get the ball down the field better than he really can provide. He's more of a distributor on a lot of short area type stuff, and that's okay, but the offense lacked explosiveness. It was so bad. And so Sam Levitt and Rashada, both of those guys have bigger arms that can access the full field to try to take advantage of ASU's playmakers at receiver who really couldn't do anything last year. And that, in turn, of course, gives you better balance with your offense. So really, I think it's primarily going to be between Levitt and Rashada if he's healthy, and both of them are with the team through camp, which you never know these days, right? But in the event that one of those guys decides to check out, or the injury issues, or just the play isn't very good or good enough, between Dillingham and his new offensive coordinator, Marcus Arroyo, who had been the head coach at UNLV for 3 years. Prior to that, he was an OC at Oregon. He's been around the game a long time. I think those guys may decide, okay, maybe we need to look at getting even another quarterback who's a senior while we allow Rashada and or Levitt to develop for another year. That's not saying that's going to happen, but you can't rule that out. And the quarterback position is so important, as you just said, that's something that you have to be in mind.
I love it. I mean, you're saying a lot of great things. I'm a big balance guy. I feel like your personnel, your coaching staff, and for football, I think just where things are aligned, right? Where your schedule puts you, how does that put you? When you look at your schedule and you look at your roster, you see what guys you guys have coming in. How do you think this team sets itself up for next year in this schedule?
Well, it's a better team for sure, and I think probably on both sides of the ball. You wonder how much better are other teams getting in the transfer portal era, where recruiting misses have less impact because you don't carry those guys on your roster as much, and everybody's kind of bringing in players that have started or played a lot at lower levels. So that's the challenge. The challenge really is I used to be able. I've been covering ASU about 20 years. I used to be able to say, oh, this is a 6 or 7 win team, and then they almost always were a 6 or 7 win team, roughly. But I feel like just watching ASU, this looks like a team that can be a 500 type of a team, or maybe even a little bit better than that if the quarterback thing works out. But then how much better are these other teams getting or not? And that I haven't watched a lot of, because I'm a college football fan, but I'm not watching Kansas State and UCF and West Virginia a lot. And I can look at who they got on paper, but it's hard to evaluate how much those guys are impacting their rosters, and that creates, I think, this is fun and it's exciting. That creates a greater variance and an ability for teams to quickly improve their roster a lot more. So, but I do think ASU is going to be very competitive this year.
How do Arizona State fans, supporters feel about this move to the Big 12? Is there some excitement about the freshness of it, or is it just this is just how it all shook out? This is how it's got to be. What's the attitude among fans about this move?
Yeah, so I think it's very bittersweet. A lot of ASU fans prefer the historical traditions of the Pac-12, but at the same time saw failed leadership and bad strategy. And so you don't want to align yourself with failed leaders and bad strategy, and even a lack of competitive will to be great in football and or in men's basketball. I think that's a big problem at ASU. ASU has more varsity sports and more scholarship players than any team in any school in the Big 12, right? And so that comes down to the mindset or the ethos of what a college administrator or president prefers the school to be. So ASU fans saw the Pac-12 dying, understands the Big 12 is very passionate and competitive, and they wanted to be a part of that. That was a preference. At the same time, you're losing a lot of things that you've always really liked about college sports and college football, and that's sad. And then also for basketball, this is a crushing thing. Like, the Big 12 is so good that a team like ASU, which doesn't have great NIL or a great arena or other things, and has Bobby Hurley 9 years in and not been very successful, this is going to be very, very painful, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, BYU, they were a huge surprise. Maybe a new change of scenery can help flip things, but change is always interesting, but we look forward to that change. Utah fans feel the same way as their ASU fans. I think it's bittersweet, but on to the next and onward and upward, and I think there's a lot of excitement about what this Big 12 can be. We're excited to cover it, and Chris, we appreciate your time giving us some insight on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Feel like Kenny Dillingham has things going in the right direction, so we appreciate you taking some time on the show today, and look forward to seeing you and your coverage coming up this fall.
Glad to be with you anytime.
All right, Chris. That's Chris Karpman, Sun Devil source of 24/7 Sports. If you want to get to know Arizona State better before the games this fall, he's your source. So we'll be right back on JJ and Alex 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.